Hi, my name is John Klingen. I'm the product manager for a product called the Hat OpenShift Application Runtimes. We affectionately call it ROAR. And thank you very much for coming. So I thought I'd begin a little bit about talking about how we've been developing applications until relatively recently. So a lot of you may be Java EE developers, maybe even traditional Spring framework developers. And the way we've historically been developing our enterprise applications is using the traditional monolithic approach, where you have an awful lot of features all kind of packed into one application. And the challenge behind that, of course, is how do I move quickly if I have many different development teams actually adding features to this single application. It has to go through a ton of testing, QE and integration testing, and before it ever hits a production environment. But one of the things that monolithic applications did provide, or not applications, but the application servers, is infrastructure, right? You have this infrastructure to manage the life cycle of applications and to manage the life cycle of instances of your platform or your Java EE application server. So you had this kind of contract from an API perspective, but you had a lot of flexibility as an organization in terms of how you went about and laid out your deployment. So that was all kind of baked into the Java EE/Spring ecosystem. Now we got to kind of rethink things. As we have cloud infrastructure, we have a lot of the features that were typically available for an application server, mainly around manageability, deploying instances or managing the instances lifecycle of your application, managing application server instances. All these things are kind of hidden now in or provided by the cloud infrastructure, right? And that means, from a traditional Java EE perspective, I don't necessarily have to carry that around anymore, right? I now have this ability to run not just Java EE applications on the cloud, but I can run Node applications, I can run Spring Boot applications, I can, you name it, right? You name the language, you can pretty much run it in a container. So the nice thing about the application server, the cloud, is that I'm no longer bound to just a single runtime, Java EE or Spring, but I'm also no longer even bound to the architecture. I don't have to just build monoliths. I can actually do microservices. I can do a fast-moving monolith. Maybe even begin to enter into the serverless world, all leveraging the same cloud architecture. So it's not that the cloud is the application server per se, but it fulfills some of the functions, this reliable set of services for your application to kind of tie into, kind of like an app server did. So with the advent of the cloud, because it can run any kind of runtime, developers are actually doing just that, right? The traditional selection of runtimes, again, Spring, Java EE, you can see me here, Microsoft.NET, right? Developers don't feel constrained into these environments anymore. What they want to do is leverage the features and capabilities of these various runtimes in the areas where they're going to provide the best value, right? If I want to, for example, do a lot of interactions with a browser, maybe I'll stick Node.js at the edge, which is really good at sending JSON formatted data between the browser and the backend services, right? It acts as kind of a gateway or a proxy. So that's just one example, right? There's tons of examples, but the idea, again, is with the cloud, I can choose the best runtime for the job that I have at hand. All right. Now, if we think about cloud infrastructures, they're going through their own evolution, or it is going through its own evolution, kind of, with the microservices architecture. So when the microservices architecture first became this growing capability, or this growing architecture, a lot of the infrastructure to support a microservices architecture didn't exist. How does one service find another service? Well, I got to have some intermediary, right? A service registry. And that's just one example. And you can see that really to do microservices effectively, you have to have a whole bunch of supporting infrastructure services to actually implement a microservices architecture. And a lot of this was done at the time where infrastructure as a service was really kind of the king of the hill, right? So you would have to manage these standalone services kind of in the context of infrastructure as a service. Now, software development is also changing, right? Think, if I'm a developer, I have to deal with changing processes, right? Maybe I'm going from traditional waterfall all the way through agile and now to DevOps, right? Processes within organizations are changing to take advantage of cloud infrastructure, microservices, with the whole goal of delivering applications more quickly into production, right? Then you have infrastructure change. I'm going perhaps from bare metal to virtual machines, now to orchestrated containers, right? That's a change. Optimizing my applications to run in a containerized environment, that's not necessarily difficult, but it's just another change that developers have to understand. And last, and probably the most obvious and straightforward to a lot of developers, is they're going from monoliths to microservices, right? And this is a very different way of developing applications, because developing a distributed application is hard, right? You have performance to worry about, you have security to worry about. Now I have many more things in my environment to manage. I went from perhaps one monolith and decomposed it into 5 different services. Now I have to manage 5 services, maybe 25 if I need to scale up, scale down. And by having more services, there's a greater chance that any one thing might fail for whatever reason, hardware or whatever, right? So this is making it a little bit difficult on developers to kind of grasp all these changes coming at them simultaneously. In fact, one other change is maybe we're being asked to switch from one platform, one language to another. Maybe it's C# to Node, right? Becoming kind of the, as people move within an organization, becoming the new language. So lots of change coming down on developers. So what we're hearing from customers is, this is really hard. We put kind of our most senior developers forward to go off and evaluate microservices, cloud platforms,